All right, welcome to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead, pour white lightning straight onto your brain. Today's white lightning will be banned right off the bat.
Well, somewhat. So
Yeah.
what we're going to do is we're going to talk about things generally. We're going to add a video that we're going to post on Rumble, and we'll tell you exactly when that is and the timestamp. And if you want to see that part of it, go to Rumble, check out that part of the video, or watch the whole thing there from the beginning. This is your chance to just skip on over. We're going to talk about the drug that is not to be named, as usual. Again, wasn't originally a hill I was going to die on, but it's more about the politics around it that kind of keeps pissing me off. We can still banter about some numbers on whether it was going to be good or not, but the problem is it's the fact that we're not allowed to banter about that that pisses me off. So
and it's to that point. I told you I was listening. Glenn Beck, his weekend podcast was an interview with Dr. Malone, and Dr. Malone made the point that early on in the pandemic, he was at the Vatican talking to some people there because the Catholic Church runs a lot of medical charities around the world. That's a major part of what they do. And he was talking to someone who'd mentioned, we have this protocol that we've been using, and what do you think of this? And Malone said, yeah, pretty much any anti-inflammatory protocol seems to work, seems to have some benefit. And we're not allowed to talk about any of that. And anyone who wants to go listen to it, I recommend you listen to it, because he does a good job of breaking down the witchcraft of it into good layman's terms to explain why that is, because of what the spike protein does to create an inflammatory response. And so once you know that, it is pretty mind-boggling that wasn't a bigger deal from the get-go of, oh, hey, this is creating a major inflammatory response. It's causing all kinds of problems. Well, let's attack that. And it was always go home unless you get so bad you need to come back to the hospital and get on a ventilator, and then cross your fingers for the vaccine that we're working on. And then once the vaccine's out, that's all you can talk about.
I'm looking for it right now, but remember when we had Steven on, he brought up a meta-analysis that I took bit by bit, and where the heck my notes are, because I have a folder specifically for COVID stuff and I can't find it, but the subject of it was treatment papers, maybe. Yes, here we go. I labeled it let's see if I can get my PDFs to show. Remember, I've been having trouble with that. Screen share. No, damn it. I think it's the app I have for opening PDFs. It's got to be. That's the only thing I can think of. Let me see if I can open it with something else. Open with Chrome. Let's try that. Haha. Screen share, Chrome. First of all, we got the opinion title. That was part of the problem. But what I did was I went through. No, this wasn't it. This was it. Is that up when I switched it over?
Ivermectin from treatment of coronavirus, meta-analysis.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the one he brought forward, and it has 10 trials that they reviewed in this meta that met their criteria. And I went through each one by one and looked at their methods and their data collection, how their study design, and then what their results were. And we were texting back and forth for a while, because I said, hey, I went through these one by one, and out of the 10 they chose, 8 were positive, but yet they still came to the conclusion that it was not effective. And I wanted to talk about that with him. And he started bringing up study design problems with all the 8 positive ones. And my big beef with that is, why were they included in the meta?
Mhm.
If
If
there
they
were
have design
study,
problems,
if they
yeah.
had design problems, et cetera. And then what they did in that meta was they assigned a bias score to them. And let me bring that back up because I also want to show something else.
In the magical way, for anyone who doesn't know this witchcraft mumbo jumbo, think of it in the magical way that Ivy League schools keep Asian students out by assigning them a social score that weights them down because their academic scores are too high and they don't want too many Asians in. This is established as fact through lawsuit, people. So if you want to see another way this very same ideology happens, there you go.
So the other point he brought up, or that's been brought up since, was it's probably because I want people to take note. I don't know if I can highlight here. Yeah, that first line at the bottom. I'm sorry, it's sideways, but that's how the PDF is. But notice the second line there. Notice where these took place. Not a single one of them is Western, except for Western, what we call Western civilization, except for the Mexico and Spain one. And the big thing was, oh, well, it's an anti-parasitic and worms are a big problem in all these other places. And if you throw out all studies that have populations that have high degrees of worms, then you don't get the same result. So it's actually making the person just generally healthier because they don't have worms, that they're able to survive COVID better. And I thought that was a very lazy analysis.
Yeah.
For 2 reasons. For one big reason, because there's a reason why there are no Western studies. And we don't know. So you're throwing, it's like doing a randomized controlled trial without a control group. We can't say it's the parasites in this area versus another area because we aren't comparing it to another area that doesn't have that, because no one's funding it there, but they are funding it in these places where they already use it often.
Yes.
And so that's my big beef. And then the second beef that I have is, even when they do bring forward like the Iran study, for instance, when they do bring forward something that's like, well, it was a minimal effect at best, it's versus the standard of care. And again, none of these are US based. Their standard of care is a protocol they give you when you test positive for COVID. Mm-hmm. Where ours is go home, try not to get anybody else sick. Our standard of care is different. If we were to compare this drug that we are debating here to our standard of care, what would we get? That's the big question. And that's the question we're not able to answer because no one's doing it. Because it takes funding.
Well, this video,
I say no one's doing it, but I'm going to bring something up after we talk about the video. Okay, so that's one of the metas. Let me bring up the other one that because that's relative to the video. This is Dr. Andrew Hill.
Oh, I didn't think you could even find this anymore.
Well, you can't find the full version because retracted. Now, I did have on here, and that's what I was looking for in my bookmarks, his link to his updated version, where, again, what he did is he took this exact same study and then assigned a bias score to all the ones that disagreed with the final conclusion. But what we have here is a meta-analysis by this man, Dr. Andrew Hill, and his team here, that put together all these studies to talk about this drug here that we're not going to name too often, so we don't come up too high in the algorithm. But the end conclusion was that it had some efficacy. Now, this is important because his paper that he republished after this one was retracted was the big meta-analysis brought before Congress in the United States when creating the guidelines that the whole healthcare community in the United States is supposed to follow to be
Oh.
responsible medicine. And so he published one that showed there were benefits to it. He retracted it, and then he brought out another one attaching this bias score to the positive studies, and then resubmitted that to Congress. And then, of course, our top agency said, "Oh, it doesn't work, and you're irresponsible if you prescribe it." And
So
also, nobody can talk about it because we're the authorities, and you can't contradict us.
so we have I found an interview with the woman who recorded Andrew Hill talking about this and got him, and we've mentioned this before because Malone and McCullough have talked about this, got him to admit that he was pressured to change his conclusion in that original meta-analysis by people with a stake in big pharma, shall we just say. And it didn't have anything to do with the data. She makes that point. He says, well, there are people here with different opinions. Well, forget the opinion. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the data. What is the analysis of the data? And you're talking about opinion. Anyway, we were going to go through this, and I've got a bunch of different clips timed out to look at. And then Sam pointed out, is that on YouTube? And I realized, oh no, it's not. Therefore, if we try and go through this, it is immediately going to get struck down.
Yeah, it's going to get nuked if we go through this on here.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think this will be the good timestamp for that?
Well, where do you want to start? Because I got onto this because you were talking about Andrew Hill's meta-analysis, and there are a number of reasons. I don't know why the original was retracted, but one of the reasons may have been, and this will probably immediately, anyway, she talks about that. So we could jump into that and jump to that point if you want, rather than going through it chronologically like I was. But I will say, for anyone who wants to go looking for it, Tess Lawrie is someone who runs she is a doctor and a medical researcher, and she has been working for a decade or more consulting with the WHO to create guidelines to evaluate drugs and this kind of thing, because her group has no financial ties to any any pharmacy company, any drug company at all. So she's trusted as an unbiased source to evaluate data and then give her recommendations to the WHO when they're creating guidelines of treatment. So that's her background, that's her expertise. And she set out to look at this drug to look at its efficacy. That's how she got involved in this.
Yeah, and I'm looking for, here we go. Now, this is another thing that your friend, that Stephen brought up, was conflicts of interest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to be relevant to when we watch this video, because we're going to see another conflict of interest. He brought up, and I hate debating somebody that's not here, but it's not really a debate. This is just informative here. Oh, by the way, no medical advice. This is just information only, stuff we've seen on the internet.
Again, this is about the politics of it.
Yeah, this is about the politics of it. We're not giving any recommendations. Talk to your doctor, and hopefully doctors are allowed to do doctoring at some point. But this is the organization that kind of developed out of this. And Tess Lawrie is basically the head of it. She started this. Now, my beef with what he said is because he talked about the merchandise they sell and everything, and how it's a big grift, and they're just they're funding, they're trying to just make money, is basically what he was talking about. The problem with that is This organization was developed in response to that big meta-analysis that they did. It wasn't an organization that did the analysis. So it was a response to it, not the other way around. When they were shot down by the Hill crowd, they said, "Oh shoot, we don't have the backing that he got because he said what they wanted. So we're going to have to go out and make our own money because science is expensive."
Yep.
And so that's my beef with it, is because if you're going to look at conflicts of interest, I'm going to actually attach some value to the fact that he was influenced in his conclusion based on funding, where they're looking for funding because of a conclusion that was already formed.
Yes.
It's completely the other way around, and we can already argue semantics there, but that's where I stand on that.
It's more than just semantics. Is one of the things I was going to bring up before we get into the video that you had made me think of, is that they show and talk about the conclusion of that original Hill meta-analysis. And in the conclusion, it's more than just this doesn't work. It's policymakers shouldn't even look at this data until we have more randomized, double-blind trials, et cetera, so forth. So policymakers shouldn't even look at, shouldn't even think about, shouldn't even discuss this data. No, forget it. Everything goes away. All we're going to look at is this. That is creepy totalitarian BS. That is the opposite of the science. Well, no, that is the science rather than science. To say, no, we're not even going to discuss this. We're not going to think about it. We're not going to admit its existence. It is verboten.
Yeah, and that's, again, another beef. There is no the science.
Mm-hmm.
The doesn't attach to science because science is a process. Science is not a thing. Science is not a conclusion of any kind. It's a process. And if that process shows that we should act in a certain way, okay, so then we start drawing further value onto that. But science is not a thing. I think this is I forgot to set my timer, so I'll have to, I guess, listen to this first part of the video to see when this timestamp is. But if you're watching, look at the timestamp on the video, and you can skip right ahead to Rumble, to that spot on Rumble, because I think we're going to go ahead and do that here. About 2 hours-ish. Okay. And the first one was approximately 20 minutes in. So we got about an hour and 40 minutes of non-YouTube friendly. Okay. So, well, for those that stuck around with the YouTube before it cut off, and you're just now hearing this as the next sounds you've heard, we've got about an hour and a half or so of not YouTube friendly content on Rumble. Click on over there if you're curious. Did you want to wrap up the COVID stuff? Because I want to bring something lighthearted up.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna tiptoe on the YouTube friendly line here real quick. This is what we have been ranting about in regards to the science and the COVID stuff for the whole time, which is science is questioning. That's what it is. You know, that's its roots, both linguistically as well as, you know, practically, is questioning and then trying to find answers to those questions. You don't have that anymore. What you have now is the science, which is purely political science. To that point, all right, so this is, I'm on this Twitter page because this is a clip from what I wanted to find, but this is, I went and I found the whole, which is from the CDC director, Michelle Walensky, talking at the Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis, and this is what she has to say.
And then maybe the other thing I'll say is this area of gray. I have frequently said, you know, we're going to lead with the science. Science is going to be the foundation of everything we do. That is entirely true. I think public heard that as science is foolproof. Science is black and white. Science is immediate and we get the answer, and then we, make the decision based on the answer. And the truth is, science is gray. And science is not always immediate. And sometimes it takes months and years to actually find out the answer. But you have to make, decisions in a pandemic before you have that answer.
It's interesting.
No, screw you, you political hack. The public didn't hear that. You told them in collusion with media and social media outlets. You told them that the science is black and white and you will be banned, suppressed, kicked out of the public square if you point out, hey, wait a minute, what about this gray area? That wasn't the public reading into that. That was what you said and what you acted on. That's where that came from. That's not our fault. Screw you.
Well, and science isn't gray. Science isn't even a thing. Science is a process. And so the gray areas are just everything we haven't studied yet.
It's not gray. It's imperfect because it's being done by people. It is being done by and interpreted by people, and people are fallible.
Not only that, because it's a process, there's steps to it.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you get the observational data. That has limitations. So then you pick things out of the observational data to actually study further, and you get the prospective or regressive data. And then you pick things out of that to randomize a trial. But even then, the better the randomized trial, the more narrow it is. And the more narrow it is, the more you have to say, well, what about this other factor? Or what about this other factor? Yes, we got this data and that seems to stand alone, have some benefit or no benefit or regression of benefit. But at the same time, what about with? There's a lot of what abouts. In fact, the nature of the questioning is what abouts. That's the hypothesis forming process. So again, there's observational data. Then there's the regressive data, then there's the prospective data, and then there's the trials. And then there's enough trials done that you can start forming some sort of conclusions that are at least mostly good. There's no gray to it at all. There's just, are you going through the process properly? And they have not gone through the process properly because they've been feeding us conclusions and then coming back later when someone debunks the conclusion. I hate to use that word, but
it's what Rogan was pointing out when he got in the kerfuffle after his interview with Dr. Malone. Okay, here's the problem with your label of misinformation. What's misinformation now? 6 months down the road is the accepted norm. How many times has that happened through the entire process of this pandemic? To Walensky's, all the way to Walensky's point here, which was not that long ago, if you said exactly word for word what she just said, you would be labeled a science denier, you would be labeled as anti-vax, you would be banned, as we talked about from our video that was taken down. We looked at the YouTube guidelines and we couldn't, we still have not gotten an answer from them, but the only thing we could figure out is their guideline of anything that causes vaccine hesitancy is so broad. Have you taken her down, YouTube? Have you struck her for being vaccine hesitant? Because how does that not only is that going to cause someone to be hesitant about this vaccine, you can label her an anti-vaxxer because you can apply that logic to any vaccine.
Until the CDC and the FDA recognize that people who have already had COVID, you got to be careful how you word this, that people who have already had COVID have a robust immunity from that previous infection, not to be confused with go get it to get a good protection. Until they recognize those of us that have already had it have a robust protection, they will not, in my eyes, be taken seriously. Mm-hmm. Only the most die-hard blue tribe making money on the grift on the other side proponents do not recognize the fact that natural immunity in the history of immune history is better than an artificial, well, it's not even artificial, than a chemical or a body response to a chemical injected in your body. It's never been the case. And the data keeps coming out as time goes on that it's not the case here. They're using the argument that, okay, so natural immunity was like almost perfectly protective against reinfection with alpha, beta, gamma, all those, a little bit less against delta, and then 56%, I think, is the number for Omicron. And so they're using the drop to 56%. Now, this is someone who was infected at the beginning of the pandemic. 2 years later, when Omicron comes in, 56%. So they're using that drop to 56% to say, oh, you should get the booster. Where they're forgetting to include the fact that if you have the big pharmaceutical companies that I won't name here version of immunity, you're much less than 56% to Omicron, because you only have one of the proteins coded for instead of the many others. And so, yeah, there is a drop off to Omicron, but that's because Omicron it's a pretty substantial variant that's highly contagious, but you're still more protected than the other way around. So until they accept that, no legitimacy for me.
It's the same thing as, well, better not get into that. Go watch the Rumble thing. All right. Well, I think we have flagellated that deceased equine sufficiently. So take us out on a lighter note. You had, so I certainly don't. I
don't know if it's lighter. It's different. How about that?
Okay.
I brought this up to you last time, and this is an opinion piece, but I'm going to bring up some further data along these lines. Does anybody remember when Biden created the problem he is saying he's going to cure?
I forgot all about that.
So this is Washington Post. I mean, we can see that we can argue which way they lean, and they would lean in the direction that he normally is on. But yes, this is an opinion piece, but it goes through the facts here on the fact that Biden threatened to filibuster this Janice Rogers Brown from serving in the U.S. Court of Appeals, or no, she got into the Court of Appeals, and then she was the front runner to be put on the Supreme Court during the Bush administration, and Biden threatened to filibuster. Well, everybody says that's an opinion piece. Well, let's go to where he actually said it. He is on air.
Oh, pesky when transcripts exist, isn't it?
Yeah,
Joe.
It's funny how that happens. Oh, he talks down about it to everybody right there, by the way. Oh, excuse me while I explain some constitutional law here. But
you don't teach crap. You've never held a whatever.
Well, damn it. I should have. Well, either way, this is the transcript of when he actually says he was going to filibuster the nomination. There's your URL there. You can read the whole thing, but nobody remembers when that happened, because his threat worked, and we got Justice Alito instead. And now fast forward approximately 20 years later, and I'm going to nominate the first blah blah blah. So there's our
what a hero you are, Joe.
Hero, yeah.
Well, I've got something that might be slightly lighthearted that we can talk about the next time we talk fitness, because it is actually related to what we are talking about here with the corruption of science into political science, which is, you know who Tess Holliday is?
Tess Holliday. The name is
She's an obese, I'm sorry, plus sized model.
Oh yeah. Okay, I know who you're talking about. She was on the cover of all those.
And she has been making the rounds on some talk shows as well as on her Instagram feed and whatever, claiming that she is anorexic. So we're going to have to talk about that at some point, because that's so stupidly absurd that, well, we just need to talk about it at some point. But
well, actually, I've been thinking about this because one of the big issues, and we talked about this in our thing we cut out on the YouTube version, but this will be on both versions, is the biggest comorbidities along with this are associated with health. And now we're having this, the body positivity movement is even getting more and more ridiculous by the day on this. Tess Holiday, from a fitness standpoint, you know, from I guess put yourself out there standpoint, you can admire her, but from a fitness standpoint, from a health standpoint, she is should be nobody's hero. I'm glad you feel good about yourself. Now, my point on this might be bannable, who knows? But if you're body positive, do something good for your body. Reward that body you so love. If you loved your body, you would make it better and make it, you're going to feel better. You're going to be happier. And to shame people like Adele for losing weight because she shed her identity as a fat person is why we in the United States, at least up until this point, is one of the worst in COVID death rates in the world, because we are fat and unhealthy in so many ways. I'll have to bring it up next time we talk, but there was a chart where it was healthcare system versus actual health of the population. And every country kind of went on this curve, and we're over here.
Yeah, well, so that's I guess where we can leave it off, is go do something good for your, not treat yourself, but do something objectively, legitimately good for your body.
Treat your body.
Yeah.
But I did want to say we should probably do even like a 10-15 minute fitness blurb at the end of each episode or something that maybe we can cut out and put in a little separate playlist or whatever. And then why don't you just think of questions and send them to me, and then I can do the subsequent research along that. And I want to keep it basic at first. I want to keep it simple, stupid, that people just don't think about, because there's so much noise in the world about this stuff.
And ask questions if you have. Remember that, you know, I play a fitness professional on TV, and Sam actually is one. So if you have questions, ask them, and we will answer them as best we can in this format to try and help people out.
All right. On that note, let's become a healthier country in every single way you can take that statement.
Absolutely. See y'all next time.